Okay, all right. We are good. We're going to continue here. So Vincent Hill, we have him up on Skype. He's outside of the courtroom in Atlanta. All morning you were listening to testimony in the Tex McIver case. Again, this is a man who was accused of intentionally shooting and killing his wife when he sat behind her in the backseat of a car, shot her through the car seat. He claims it was an accident, that they were driving through a tough or a rough neighborhood. He was sleeping, he says. He has a sleep disorder, and he suddenly awoke, and he was so caught by surprise, so nervous already, that he accidentally pulled the trigger, and that's when the bullet went through the car seat and into his wife's back, and she died later at the hospital. Vincent, are you there?
I'm here, Amy.
Nice to see you. So we heard from a man named Jay Grover this morning. Who is Jay Grover?
So Jay Grover described himself as a friend to both Diane McIver and Tex McIver. So he had some very intricate details about the relationship, about things that Tex said after the murder, and some of the things that he said and some of the things that the prosecution brought up. Of course, the jury was open-eyed to it. There was some talks about how Tex wanted to get the vehicle showroom ready so that he could sell it. The prosecution made that appear that Tex was trying to possibly get rid of evidence that may have been inside that vehicle. There was talks about a person named Annie Anderson, and the prosecution described her as Annie the masseuse. She's a masseuse. She's also good friends with Diane and Tex. But the prosecution made it seem like Annie Anderson may have been more. There was talks about how this Mr. Grover saw Annie wearing Diane's boots shortly after she was killed at the ranch. And I watched the jury very closely, and all of the females had the "oh no, he didn't" look on their face when they heard this, right? So it was very interesting. But the defense came back pretty quick on that and proved that, hey, we don't know if Diane allowed people to wear these boots. We don't know if Diane said she could have those in the event of her death. We don't know all of that, but it was very, very interesting to watch that jury.
But Vincent, aside from their shocked looks, and aside from this fact about her wearing the boots, so far we haven't really heard any evidence to support the fact that he was cheating on his wife.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's what the prosecution was trying to lean to, whether Tex had gotten massages from this Annie the masseuse, as they refer to her, inside the condo.
Well, it would make sense, right? It would make sense,
absolutely.
Vincent, if Annie the masseuse is giving massages, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, especially if Diane also knew about Annie the masseuse. It would definitely make sense. So there's no indication, no evidence to say that Tex was cheating on his wife here, which is what the prosecution is looking for. And, you know, quite frankly, I don't think the prosecution has proven motive, at least from a intermarital affair standpoint or from a financial standpoint. Now, one thing that is interesting, again, it goes back to the jury and their expression. When they showed a picture of Diane wearing a very expensive necklace, and Mr. Grover was testifying that, yes, this is a necklace that Diane wore, and this is apparently one that was sold during the after she had died by Tex. You know, again, I watched the females' reactions, and it was, oh no, he didn't.
Right. Well, it sounds like they're playing upon the emotions of these jurors and trying to plant seeds in their minds to make them think, oh, maybe this was going on, oh, maybe that was going on. But we know that they're not, like you said, trying to establish that an intermarital affair was the motive here. We know that their motive for the prosecution is that this was purely financially based, that he wanted access to all of the money that she made. She kept the finances separate, and he wanted to get his hands on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what the prosecution played to today. The fact that soon after Diane was killed, Tex started selling off her stuff. Mr. Grover testified that Tex asked him about how to get the certificate of death so he can open up probate, so he can start selling off this stuff. So the jury picked up on that. But again, the defense, they did a heck of a job deflating everything that the prosecution said this morning with this Mr. Grover.
Yeah, so they're trying to show that he was eager to get his hands on money however he could get it, by selling off her belongings. I know there was also mention, right, Vincent, about him inquiring about Social Security and whether he could collect her Social Security checks. And Jay Grover said something to the effect of, I don't know, I'm too young to collect Social Security. I'm not sure how it works.
well, thankfully, I'm too young to collect it as well. And yeah, I don't know how that works. But again, I mean, that's typical when someone dies, right? Like, I've been married twice, and my spouse at the time had died and I was due Social Security, I would ask those questions.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that I was after the money, but that's what I'm entitled to as their spouse. So to say that this is financially motivated, I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, because what they're trying to do is say, well, because he's asking these questions so soon after she died, because he's selling things off so soon, it shows that he didn't really care that she's gone. And because he didn't express grief in the way that he's hanging on to everything, or that he can't get his mind straight to get his affairs in order because he's just so grief-stricken, because he's not showing that type of grief, well, that means that he's so cold about this that he planned it and he intended it. Doesn't that sound like that's what they're trying to do here?
I mean, that's the prosecution's whole theory here. But the thing is, we all grieve differently. Me being former military, just like Tex McIver is, and former police, I assure you, I may see something and it not faze me in a way where people would assume it should faze me, but internally, no one knows what's going on, versus someone that doesn't have that training and hasn't seen the things that someone in the military or police has seen. They may freak out over it. So just to say that someone grieved differently than we expect them to doesn't prove motive, nor does it make them a killer.
Well, certainly in a court of law, it's not direct enough, it's not substantial enough evidence, I would say, to support an intent to kill, because you're talking, first of all, you're talking about stuff that happened after the fact, and you're basing it all upon, like you said, the way that this man grieves. Now, what about the PR consultant? There was some talk by Jay Grover about Tex talking about a PR consultant that he hired. Why do you think that was relevant?
Yeah, honestly, Amy, I don't know why that was relevant. I did watch the jury when that was going on. They seemed to tune that part of the testimony out. I think the jury, like most juries, were looking for who has the juicier story, right? So when they started talking about Annie wearing these boots and Tex selling this expensive necklace, that's when they really perked up, but what's interesting
because that's like Lifetime movie drama stuff.
Exactly. It's like a Lifetime movie, something you would see at 9 o'clock Central Time on a Sunday night on the Hallmark Channel or on Lifetime. You're absolutely right. But here's one of the very interesting things about this case. It's not a whodunit, right? And think about this. If Diane suspected something was amiss, do you think she would have actually handed the gun to Tex McIver that ultimately killed her? Because that's been the story from the beginning, that Diane passed him the gun while she was in the front seat. He was sitting in the back seat. So I think if Diane thought there was problems in the marriage, whether Tex was cheating, he was after her money, that's something as a juror I would question. Well, why would she hand him this gun if she suspected anything?
Yeah, and certainly we know that she was not a pushover. So I know you have to get back to the courtroom now, Vincent. Thank you so much for joining us.
Amy, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, keep us updated. We're going to go back now to the trial testimony of Leon Jacob in Texas, and he is accused of hiring someone to kill his ex-girlfriend. He is on the stand right now.